It's a make or break year for Zion Williamson, and what a bigger way to make it than MVP of the league. Here are 5 keys to an MVP season for Zion Williamson. It's Monday's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Monday. This is the final week where we will be 3 days a week. So we're going to be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday live show at 7 p.m. Central, and we're going to be back to Monday through Friday next week, the #1 Pelicans podcast, getting you set up and ready for Media Day. It's going to be a great time this season. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. So thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. Again, the #1 Pelicans podcast coming to y'all like no one else is. The news that you want to know, the insight that you want to hear. And if you want to support the channel, comment down below on YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, become an everydayer because we're going to be back to 5 days a week. Everydayer, listen every single day. So let's get right into today's show. The Pelicans have a bit of a make or break year. I think a lot of y'all agreed with me during the live show that we did last week, Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, in case you want to join this week. And that was, and a lot of y'all agreed with me when I said it's kind of make or break, right? You can't keep just doing this again and again and again. And if Zion Williamson misses time, it doesn't go well. Can you keep trying to build your franchise around him? Or does it just need to be like, we're parting ways, went down with the ship, whatever, right? And I think a lot of people agreed. And that goes for a number of just things here, I think, with the team. So if Zion wants to make it, though, he's capable of becoming an MVP level player. So here's how he can do that. #1, you know what I'm going to say, right? This is not a surprise. This has kind of been the thing for the team all offseason, last year too. Stay healthy. I don't even really need to list this, right? I don't need to put these in any order. They're not really in any order. This one, though, is #1. You need to stay healthy. One, if you want to win MVP with the changes to the new collective bargaining agreement, you got to play 65 games or more. So if he doesn't play 65 games, you're not eligible for end of season awards. 65 games out of 82. That's what we're kind of setting the benchmark here. But more than that, you've got to do all of the right things. You go back to that Dime magazine interview that he had with CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, and he's kind of making fun of CJ for stretching and doing all of those type of things that CJ does to let him play the majority of an NBA season, to have made him as successful and, have that longevity that Zion doesn't have right now. So it's not just stay healthy on the court, but do all of the right things that are going to keep you healthy. You could stay healthy just because you didn't get injured. It doesn't mean you're doing anything to proactively stay out there on the court other than just avoid unlucky injuries. Do things that even if an injury comes up or as your body starts to wear down a little bit over the course of a long season, you're okay because you've been prepping for this and handling things well. That's what we want to see Zion Williamson do. By all accounts, he's doing that. We've seen the pictures of him. One of the things to notice in there, look at the band work and other things that he is doing. It's not just weightlifting and running. It's other things that are good for his body. Hopefully he's working on things like how to land a little bit better, bend your knees. He used to land very straight-legged in college, and the Pelicans had him change all of that. And then finally with this one, when things get tough, what do? We know he's capable of getting in shape in the offseason. We saw him do it last year, and he came into the season, and he was freaking awesome, right? He's a good NBA player. 26 points per game in just 29 games is the problem, while shooting 61% from the field, getting to the free throw line 8.6 times. He did this in just 33 minutes, also 4.6 assists. These are all great numbers. But when things get tough, what do? And that's where this has always seemed to fall apart. When he broke his foot, did he do everything as well as he should properly? I think we can say no. And that was a problem. This year, when the hamstring came up, did he handle it in the way that he should have? I think the answer to that is also no. So when the going gets tough, right, what are you going to do? When there's some adversity this season, how do you handle it? That's going to help him play 65 or more games this year. So number 2, this one's less about Zion and more about the coaching staff. We need to see lineups with shooters around Zion Williamson. We need to see like a 4-out, 5-out lineup with Zion in there, essentially. Zion and 4 shooters, and let him just operate and do his thing. There's a few reasons for this, and this one's on the coaching staff, not Zion. This is a coaching staff thing. You want him to drive and score, certainly, but we want him to do it more efficiently. Can he get down there with more space, just go get an easy basket, and that's that? Can you do that if he has 4 shooters out there to properly space the court for him? This is a give and take with this. And something that I've said to you for a very long time, if you've been an everydayer or a longtime listener of the show for a couple of years now, you can't properly space the court for Zion Williamson. Because of what he does at the rim, what he shoots at the rim is the equivalent of like a 45% shooter from 3. So if you're looking at the game plan and you go, okay, we can either let Zion score at the rim, or we can, we can either double Zion at the rim and leave a shooter open, or we can go 1-and-1, one defender on the shooter, one defender on Zion. When you're looking at it, unless that shooter is a guy that's going to hit 50% from 3, the better choice is to double team Zion and try and slow him down there. Even if that shooter is like a 38% shooter, it's better to let them take a wide open look than it would be to not double Zion Williamson. He shot last year at the rim 72.1%. That's absurd. So you don't really space the court well for him. You have shooters around him that make teams pay when you do double Zion for when he finds others. That's what doing that will do. Let's say that works, though. Well, that means he has to fight through less contact to get to the rim, less chances of injury. Things like that is what we want to see that's going to help Zion. That's why I kind of put this one right after the stay healthy part. More shooters and let him just kind of do his thing. Okay, attack the basket, or he can just kick it out and there's good ball movement on the perimeter to find an open man for 3. I'm cool with that even if they miss the 3-point shot. You just want him to operate more efficiently. He's already absurdly efficient. But we've also seen them throw some real bad lineups out there, whether it's Zion with Valanciunas and another non-shooter, whether it's Herb Jones, unfortunately, or someone else. Let's change some of that and put proper lineups around Zion Williamson and watch him, get his numbers, make it easier for him to score, but then also, and this is going to go a long way towards the MVP votes in the discussion, all NBA and all of that stuff, really. It's going to allow him to play make more, which is something he already does a good job of. But you need to kind of have a balanced scoring attack. That's what I want to look at. Playmaking just a little bit more. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Ibotta, like the Pelicans jersey patch. Football season is back. You might be tailgating, having those barbecues out there, getting your drinks and everything that you are doing, all the necessities for all of that. Well, you're spending your hard-earned money and you're not getting anything in return. So you may as well start using Ibotta, because Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. You either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and you get cash back. It's really that easy. And the average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. Imagine what you could do with an extra $120 in your pocket. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. And you can even earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers when you use Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering Locked On listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta when you use promo code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED, LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, like on the Pelicans patch, in the Google Play or App Store, and use promo code LOCKED. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday, soon to be Monday through Friday again. I'm excited to be back to 5 days a week with y'all. You can hear it. I sound a little refreshed here. Back to Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, giving you the insight you want into with the team here. I didn't get the new thing set up that I wanted, that I was talking about during the live broadcast. We'll probably roll it out Wednesday or maybe even Thursday during the live show. I will get it set up this weekend with the Tulane game, the Saints game. Played golf too. All got a little bit away from me with everything, so I didn't get the opportunity to. But look, Twitter's rough. It's just not fun to use anymore. It hasn't been fun for a long time. Here's another way for y'all to interact with me that's not one of those like alternate sites that no one's actually using. We'll roll it out. Ross Jackson, who should be your second listen today after that important Saints win over the Tennessee Titans, uses this with Locked On Saints. So I'm excited to do the same thing here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Keep an eye out for that. We'll be breaking it all out in your second listen. Yeah, Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints. Dude's awesome. Hung out with him Friday. He was great. Okay, let's keep talking about Zion Williamson here and how he can be MVP of the league. We just went over stay healthy. The coaching staff needs to put proper lineups around him, because if you put proper lineups around him, guess what? He can play make a little bit more. And he does a good job of this already. We've seen point Zion as a thing. 4.6 assists last year was great. Those are very, very good numbers because he's such a focal point on offense that people double team him, and he's selfless at times, gives up the ball and gets the ball to the right place that it needs to go. So play make a little bit more. You obviously want him driving and scoring over anything else. This is not a player that you want to be like truly selfless and just dish the ball out and get the ball away and things like that. You want him to score if he can. 26 points per game. He's one of the most efficient scorers per minute, basically, in like league history, essentially. He's so good. So no other shot is going to probably be as efficient or effective as a Zion Williamson drive. But you do need to keep defenses off balance. You need to involve your other guys in there. So playmaking a little bit more with the right kind of lineups around him, a mobile big that he can just kind of give the ball up to, who can go into the dunker spot and throw it down. 3-point shooters who actually have a chance of making the shots. I should have pulled the numbers, and I'll see if I can do this really quickly, of like potential assists that Zion Williamson could have had last season but didn't because, his teammates missed a lot of those shots and things like that. And that's not exactly the type of situation. I'm not going to be able to pull it up while I am doing this. Where's the tracking data? Let's see. And that's an important thing. So guys have to make shots. So if you do that, I think you can see Zion's numbers go up even higher. And I think that's something that gets me really excited about what he's capable of doing in this league. Zion Williamson, I don't have the numbers. That's okay. Let's try and do this in the moment here. Zion. We'll find it eventually. So he's capable of getting a bunch more assists and numbers than he has already if guys were to actually make shots. Okay, he averaged 9.2 potential assists last season. 4.6 is what he ended up with. Look at someone like Ben Simmons, who averaged a similar number of potential assists, but had 6.1 assists per game more, so about 1.5 more. So if guys are just hitting 2 more shots, something like that, off of his assists, that's a significant deal for the Pelicans. That makes his numbers look better, gets him from 4.6 to over 6 assists per game. That's going to eventually open things up more too. That means he's going to have better looks. He's going to be able to drive a little bit more. There's going to be more space, right? Because teams are finally realizing, okay, we got to at least try and cover other guys too, because they're burning us every time we go with this game plan. Remember his first game? Remember how they were doubling and triple teaming him against Spurs every time because the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich were like, we're not going to let this dude operate. And the Pelicans just couldn't make the San Antonio Spurs pay. If you let him play make with the right lineups around him, that changes. And you're also going to make these other players more effective too, because they're getting quality looks, because they're going to be wide freaking open because it's Zion Williamson out there on the court doing the thing. The court gravity that he has is just unreal. This is not something that you normally see in the NBA where players are terrified of him. When you look at how he finishes around the rim with the burst that he has to get there in the first place, he finishes like Kyrie Irving. And I think Kyrie Irving is one of the best finishers around the basket in NBA history. And there's a lot of shades of that in how Zion Williamson plays his game. So you don't want him to slow down with that too much. But teams are going to try and can take the rim away. We've seen Zion Williamson struggle a little bit when it comes to like extreme length. The Milwaukee Bucks are a good example of that. A couple of other teams that have a lot of length, a lot of arms, things like that around the basket does really mess him up a little bit. And then when that's the case, that's great. He won't be able to score, but now he's ready to play make and do other things for other players, which is going to open things up. And against those type of teams, say you're in, I don't know, a 7-game series against one eventually, you need him to be able to do that, and you need players to kind of be ready for that. So letting him play make because of good lineups around him with shooters. You know, it's a little bit harder with the Trey Murphy injury right now. That was someone I really was excited to see out there on the court with him. Could you have run a lineup of Zion and then say Hawkins, Trey, B.I., CJ? There's a lot of shooting there, or kind of a lot of shooting there. There is a lot of shooting there, in theory. How much fun would that have been with Zion kind of doing the thing and Brandon Ingram as the secondary playmaker around him? CJ moving off ball, Hawkins moving off ball, Trey doing what Trey Murphy does, which would have been draining a ton of threes. You cover Trey, you cover CJ, it goes to Hawkins and Brandon Ingram. You cover Ingram and CJ, you have Trey Murphy and Hawkins open. All of that sounds really great in theory, and maybe we'll get to that at some point this season. But this is why maybe they need another shooter too would be really helpful on this roster. But there's a lot of guys there that can make teams pay. Let's let Zion Williamson kind of do the thing with these right kind of lineups around him, which are essentially Zion at the 5 lineups, which haven't been great defensively. More on that in the next segment. But I do want to have seen what this could have looked like. And the Trey injury kind of takes a little bit of the wind out of all of that. But let him play make a little bit more, and I think that could be a great thing. I think those assists could get up to over 5.5 per game. You could easily add 1 with the right lineups around him of guys who aren't missing shots. You know, Najee Marshall's going to miss shots. It's what kind of this thing. He's not a good 3-point shooter. A couple other players too. So put the right lineups around him. Let those guys not miss shots and see what it does to a defense. So coming up next, does Zion need a jumper? Not what you think. Not what we're doing here, but I'll explain. He needs to add a little bit more to his bag and why. And then, yes, we'll talk defensively as well. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday for y'all, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, the #1 Pelicans podcast out there. We're back Monday through Friday starting next week. We'll also have a new way for y'all to interact with me. I'm excited. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now for your second listen, go check out Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints. You should be an everydayer of Locked On Saints and Locked On Pelicans. Big dub for the Saints. Love to see that in the opening game of the season. Feeling good. Feeling good about the black and gold, although the refs completely suck. And maybe Ross will explain what was going on with some of those PI calls during that game. Okay, Zion Williamson. We've gone through 3 reasons why and what he can do, kind of keys to an MVP season. 2 more. And this one comes down to something a lot of y'all feel really strongly about. Zion needs a jumper. He doesn't. He does need to add another move or 2. Or he could afford to add another move or 2. This is different than he needs a jumper or he needs anything. He doesn't technically need anything. This is a dude who averaged 26 points per game last season, 4.6 assists, 7 rebounds, including 2 offensive boards, gets to the free throw line over 8.5 times per game, shoots 72% at the rim. If these were his career numbers, he would be a lock in the Hall of Fame, a easy first ballot Hall of Famer. He would be on an all-NBA team every single season. What he's doing now and how he plays now and the things that he does is insane. 26 points per game on 16.2 shot attempts is absurdly efficient. He doesn't need to add anything. But it doesn't hurt if he does. Doesn't hurt if he does. And you started to see him do it a little bit more next season. I don't want him to get a full-on like jumper, a long mid-range jumper, because look, he shoots 72% at the rim, Here, I'll use his career numbers. He shoots 70% at the rim, 0 to 3 feet for his career. 3 to 10 feet, he shoots 41.3%. 10 to 16 feet, he shoots 47%. He does not make 16 to 3-point range shots. The best one, 47%, is a far cry from 70%, right? For a shot that's worth the same amount of points. Try and score at the rim. It's going to be totally fine. But he is adding more, and I like that it's keeping teams off balance. Last season, he took about 5% more of those short mid-rangers, kind of the in-the-paint mid-rangers, and was doing a decent enough job of them. 44% in those type of shots. And those are the type of ones where, he's driving, the defense kind of walls him off at the rim. He realizes that, he pulls up and unleashes a jumper or kind of does a quick little spin move, turnaround, fadeaway kind of thing to just keep defense, as I'm dying here apparently, to keep the defense off balance. He's adding a little bit more of that to his game. You'd like to see him also, work on his right hand a little bit more instead of going left as often as he does, because it becomes a little bit more predictable. So anything that can kind of keep a defense off balance when, look, we know how to defend Zion Williamson. The way to do it is out there. Doesn't mean you can, or doesn't mean teams do it well, but you know what to do. But if you could screw up the game plan a little bit more, I think that would go a long way towards maybe adding some longevity to it. The best argument for him needing a jumper is not, teams are going to give him those shots. It doesn't matter. They're not good shots. Go do the better shots. It's, okay, well, if you can shoot a mid-range jumper and you don't have to go create contact at the rim, maybe it saves your body a little bit. Maybe it helps you play those 65 games or more. There's an argument to be made for that. Not that it's a better use of his thing, right? That's like saying he should become a 3-point shooter. But no, don't do that. Just attack the basket and go and do that. Last year, by the way, 37% from 3. It's not terrible. He's got some of it in him somewhere, just not on enough volume per game to actually have it be one of those things where it's a threat to teams whatsoever. But you're seeing him add a little bit more to his bag. So those little runners, those floaters, turnarounds, things like that, going to the right instead of the left, all that's going to make him a better player. And when, MVP voters see how much you've added to your game and how you're growing as a player, do you think that goes a long way towards helping you kind of win those type of awards? And then finally, one thing that kind of goes by the wayside when we talk about a lot of players, right, other than Herb Jones, is defense. You want to see him better defensively. I think he was not good last year, but not bad defensively. On-ball defense for him has not actually been a very big problem. He looks good there. He does look at times a little bit lost defensively working off-ball, and you don't see him rotate over and contest in ways that maybe you would really, truly like to see him do. But you started to see him really buy in more defensively, and at times looked good or like at least adequate out there, which, hey, that's a really cool thing and something that I'm very okay with him working on. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite defender. I don't think you're going to see like Duke Zion on defense. Part of that is the court spacing there is worse. And what he has is a very strong instinct for the basketball. Knows when to go and jump in the passing lanes, try and poke it free for a steal. Knows when there's kind of like a moment of weakness in a player and just goes for the ball to try and rip it out of their arms. I still go back to Kevin Knox in that first summer league game where Zion just ripped it out of his hands and then went up and put it back for a dunk before the earthquake hit. He has kind of just a nose for the ball. It's a little bit harder to do that in the NBA when there's just more space between players. They're making slightly faster passes, zipping the ball around a little bit more. But whatever he can do defensively, whether that is trying to be like a weak side shot blocker, coming over and timing it and knowing when to get up and block shots with that insane leap ability that he has, the athleticism that he has, that I think will kind of make up for any other defensive shortcomings that he may have. And that's something that voters will see. That's something that, okay, you're an MVP candidate, you got to play a little bit of defense too. Even Nikola Jokic is like above average, almost good defensively because he worked on it when he used to be terrible on that side of the ball. And that's not the case anymore. So if Zion can do that, people will notice that. It also helped the Pelicans. And look, they were the sixth best defense last year. He played 29 games. They were good. He fits into the scheme. He's not bad defensively, but if you can work a little bit better off ball, I think that would help the Pelicans tremendously. And look, they can't really target him too much now because I do think he's a decent enough on-ball defender. So stay healthy, get the right lineups around him to let him play make out of those lineups, add another move or two, even though he doesn't need one. And then, it's basically just like try hard defensively. Get kind of the court's awareness and spacing down and what you need to do. And I think he's capable of all of that. So what are your 5 keys to Zion for him to have an MVP season? But this is what I see, and I think this is all realistic for him. He's absolutely an MVP level player when he's healthy out there on the court. And all of these things are very doable, I think. And we could be in store. It's a make or break year for the best Zion season yet. So let me know what you think in the comments down below on YouTube. And that's going to do it for Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Back with y'all on Wednesday, final week of 3 days a week. And then we'll be back to 5 days a week starting a week from today. Monday, the 18th, I think is what the date is. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. And I'll be back with y'all on Wednesday.